Happy Tuesday, everyone. Welcome to Quarantine Story Time. I'm Charlotte, and sorry I'm running a few minutes late. I took a nap that lasted a long time. So I'm still waking up, but I'm here to pick up on Leo Tolstoy. And apologies to those of you who tuned in yesterday as I, hey Mom, as I had some errands to run that took longer than I thought. So I hope you got my message as I was en route trying to tell you that I was not going to make it back in any sort of time to be reading. So thank you to those who came back out again today. I have the live chat up, so feel free to give a wave and say hey. I appreciate those who are tuning in. And we'll pick back up in part 2 again. So this is all in the... we're back in the, we are in, I was going to say Petersburg and Moscow, but we're not. We're in Bald Hills. We're at the home of Count Count Volokhonsky. And this is where Prince Vasily is trying to get his son, Anatoly, the scoundrel, married to Prince Andrei's sister, Princess Maria, who seems to be a sickly and slightly downtrodden individual who does not have maybe the most beauty, but seems to have like some other maybe good character qualities. Unfortunately, she's seems to be just pushed around a lot. So yeah, her sister-in-law, Prince Andrei's wife, and her sort of like lady-in-waiting, I guess, Mademoiselle Bourrienne, were just trying to fancy her up and get her pretty, and actually it seemed like they made it worse. Made her just like kind of look worse than she normally does, and kind of really stressed her out. So after putting her foot down and stopping the well-meant but ill-advised or just ill-conceived makeover that she received, and stopping her friends and putting them out of her room, she's collected herself and is just going to go in as she is without any more changes, no matter what. And so she's about to meet Prince Andrei and no, sorry, not Prince Andrei, Prince Vasily and his son Anatoly. So without further ado, let's pick up there. We're going to try to read section 4 and 5 today. So thank you. When Princess Maria came in, Prince Vasily and his son were already in the drawing room, talking with the little princess and Mademoiselle Bourrienne. When she came in with her heavy step, planting her heels, the men and Mademoiselle Bourrienne rose, and the little princess, pointing to her, said, "Voilà, Marie." Princess Maria saw them all, and saw them in detail. She saw the face of Prince Vasily momentarily freezing in a serious expression at the sight of the princess, and the face of the little princess curiously reading on the faces of the guests the impression Marie had made. She also saw Mademoiselle Bourrienne with her ribbon, and her beautiful face and her gaze, lively as never before, directed at him. But she could not see him. She saw only something big, bright, and beautiful, which moved towards her as she came into the room. Prince Vasily went up to her first and kissed the bald head that bowed over her hand. Prince Vasily went up to her first, and she kissed the bald head that bowed over her hand, and to his words replied that, on the contrary, she remembered him very well. Then Anatoly came up to her. She still did not see him. She only felt a gentle, firm hand firmly take hold of her hand, and barely touched the white forehead with beautiful, pomaded blonde hair above it. When she looked at him, his beauty struck her. Anatoly, the thumb of his right hand placed beneath a fastened button of his uniform, chest thrust out, shoulders back, swinging his free legs slightly, and inclining his head a little, gazed silently and cheerfully at the princess, obviously without thinking of her at all. Anatoly was not resourceful, not quick and eloquent in conversation, but he had instead a capacity, precious in society, for composure and unalterable assurance. When an insecure man is silent at the first acquaintance, and shows an awareness of the impropriety of this silence and a wish to say something, it comes out badly. But Anatoly was silent, swung his leg, and cheerfully observed the princess's hairstyle. It was clear that he could calmly remain silent like that for a very long time. If anyone feels awkward because of this silence, speak up, but I don't care to, his look seemed to say. Besides that, in Anatoly's behavior with women, there was a manner which more than any other awakened women's curiosity, fear, and even love. A manner of contemptuous awareness of his own superiority, as if he were saying to them with his looks, I know you, I know, but why should I bother with you? And you'd be glad if I did. Perhaps he did not think that when he met women, and it is even probable that he did not, because he generally thought little. But such was his look and manner. The princess felt it, and as if wishing to show him that she dared not even think of interesting him, turned to the old prince. The conversation was general and lively, thanks to the little princess's voice and the lip with its little mustache which kept rising up over her white teeth. She met Prince Vasily in that jocular mode often made use of by garrulously married people, which consists in the fact that between the person and thus addressed and oneself, there are supposed to exist some long-established jokes and merry, amusing reminiscences not known to everyone. When in fact there are no such reminiscences, as there were none between the little princess and Prince Vasily. Prince Vasily readily yielded to this tone. The little princess also involved Anatoly, whom she barely knew, in this reminiscence of never-existing funny incidents. Mademoiselle Bourrienne also shared in these common reminiscences, and even Princess Maria enjoyed feeling herself drawn into this merry reminiscence. So at least we can make full use of you now, dear prince, the little princess said, in French, of course, to Prince Vasily. It won't be as our soirees at Annette's, where you always run away. Remember, cette chère Annette? But you won't go talking politics with me like Annette. And our little red tea table? Oh, yes. Why did you never come to Annette's? The little princess asked Anatoly. I know, she said, winking. Your brother Hippolyte has told me about your affairs. Oh, she shook his finger at him. I never knew your Parisian pranks. But Hippolyte, didn't he tell you? Said Prince Vasily, turning to his son and seizing the princess by the hand, as if she were about to run away and he had barely managed to hold her back. Didn't he tell you himself, Hippolyte, pined for the dear princess and how her little mettez à la porte? Ah, c'est la belle de femmes princesse, he said, turning to Princess Maria. For her part, Mademoiselle Bourrienne did not miss her chance, at the word Paris, to enter as well into the general conversation of reminiscences. She permitted herself to ask whether Anatoly had left Paris long ago, and how he liked the city. Anatoly answered the Frenchwoman quite willingly, and gazed at her with a smile, conversed with her about her fatherland. Seeing the pretty Bourrienne, Anatoly decided that even here at Bald Hills, it would not be boring. Not bad at all, he thought, looking her over. She's not bad at all, this demoiselle de compagnie. I hope she'll bring her along when she marries me, he thought. La petite est gentille. The old prince was dressing unhurriedly in his study, frowning and thinking over what he was going to do. The arrival of these guests angered him. What are Prince Vasily and his boy to me? Prince Vasily is an empty babbler, so the son must be a fine one, he grumbled to himself. He was angry because the arrival of these guests raised in his soul an unresolved, constantly stifled question, a question in regard to which the old prince always deceived himself. The question was whether he could ever resolve to part with Princess Maria and give her to a husband. The prince had never ventured to ask himself this question directly, knowing beforehand that he would answer it in all fairness, and fairness contradicted more that feeling. It contradicted the whole possibility of his life. For Prince Nikolai Andreevich, life without Princess Maria, despite the fact that he seemed to value her little, was unthinkable. And why should she marry, he thought. She's sure to be unhappy. Liza's married to Andrei. A better husband would seem hard to find these days. But is she pleased with her fate? And who's going to take her out of love? She's plain, awkward. She'll be taken for her connections, for her wealth. Don't girls live unmarried and all the happier? So thought Prince Nikolai Andreevich as he dressed. But at the same time, the ever-deferred question called for immediate resolution. Prince Vasily had obviously brought his son with the intention of making a proposal, and would probably ask for a direct answer today or tomorrow. His name, his position in society were decent. Well, I'm not against it, the prince said to himself, but he must be worthy of her. We'll see about that. We'll see about that, he said aloud. We'll see about that. And with brisk steps, as usual, he entered the drawing room, took everyone in with a quick glance, noticed the little princess's change of dress, the ribbon on Borean, and Princess Maria's ugly hairstyle, and the smiles of Borean and Anatoly, and his daughter's solitude amidst the general conversation. Got herself up like a fool, he thought, looking spitefully at his daughter. No shame, and he doesn't even want to know her. He went over to Prince Vasily. Well, greetings. Greetings, glad to see you. For a dear friend, no detours too long. Prince Vasily began, as usual, quickly, self-confidently, and familiarly. Here is my second one. I recommend him to your loving kindness. Prince Nikolai Andreevich looked over Anatoly. A fine boy, he said. Well, come and kiss me. Then he offered him his cheek. Prince Anatoly kissed the old man, then looked at him curiously, and with perfect calm, expecting him to come out with something eccentric as his father had promised. Prince Nikolai Andreevich sat in his usual place at the end of the sofa, moved a chair for Prince Vasily towards him, pointing to it, and began asking questions about political matters and the latest news. He listened as if with attention to Prince Vasily's account, but kept glancing at Princess Maria. So they're already riding up from Potsdam, he repeated Prince Vasily's last words, suddenly stood up and went over to his daughter. So you've spruced yourself up like that for the guests, he said. Fine, very fine, you do your hair up in some new ways for the guests, but I say to you in front of the guests that in future you dare not change anything without my permission. Mon Pierre, it's my fault, the little princess intervened, blushing. That's entirely as you will, ma'am, said Prince Nikolai Andreevich, bowing and scraping before his daughter-in-law, but she needn't make herself ugly. She's plain enough as it is. And he sat down in his place again, paying no attention to the daughter he had driven to tears. On the contrary, this hairstyle is very becoming to the princess, said Prince Vasily. Well, my good fellow, young prince, what's your name? Said Prince Nikolai Andreevich, turning to Anatoly. Come here, let's talk, let's get acquainted. Now the fun begins, thought Anatoly, and smiling, he took a seat nearer to the old prince. Well, now they say, my dear, that you were educated abroad, not like your father and me, who were taught to read by the beadle. Tell me, my dear, you've now serving in the horse guards, the old man asked, studying Anatoly closely and intensely. No, I've been transferred to the infantry, replied Anatoly, barely able to keep from laughing. Ah, a good thing. So, my dear, you want to serve your Tsar and country? It's wartime. Such a fine fellow must serve. So off to the front? No, Prince. Our regiment is already on the march, but I'm enlisted. What am I enlisted in, Papa? Anatoly returned with a laugh to his father. Nice service. Very nice. What am I enlisted in? Ha, ha, ha. Prince Nikolai Andreevich laughed. And Anatoly laughed still louder. Suddenly, Prince Nikolai Andreevich frowned. Well, go, he said to Anatoly. Anatoly, with a smile, went back to the ladies. So you did educate them abroad, Prince Vasily, eh? The old prince turned to Prince Vasily. I did what I could, and I'll tell you, the education there is much better than ours. Yes, everything's different nowadays. Everything's the new way. A fine lad, though. A fine lad. Well, come with me. He took Prince Vasily under the arm and led him to his study. Prince Vasily, finding himself alone with the prince, at once declared to him his wishes and hopes. And what do you think? The old prince said gruffly. That I'm holding on to her, that I can't part with her? People imagine things, he pronounced gruffly. She can marry tomorrow. Only I'll tell you, I'd like to know my son-in-law better. You know my rules. Everything's in the open. I'll ask her tomorrow in your presence. If she wants, let him stay a while. Let him stay, and I'll see, the prince snorted. Let her marry him. It's all the same to me, he shrieked in the same shrill manner in which he had shouted on taking leave of his son. I'll tell you straight out, said Prince Vasily in the tone of a cunning man, convinced that it is unnecessary to use cunning in the view of his interlocutor's perceptiveness. You see through people. Anatoly is no genius, but he's an honest, good lad, an excellent son, and one of us. Well, all right, we'll see. As always happens with lovely women who have long lived without the society of men, on Anatoly's appearance, all three women in Prince Nikolai Andreevich's house felt equally that their life had not been life until that moment. The power of thought, feeling, observation instantly increased tenfold in them, as if their life, going on in darkness till then, was suddenly lit up by a new light filled with meaning. Princess Maria did not think at all, or even remember about her face and her hairstyle. The handsome, open face of the man who would perhaps be her husband absorbed all her attention. To her he seemed kind, brave, resolute, manly, and magnanimous. She was convinced of it. Thousands of fancies of her future family life kept emerging in her imagination. She drove them away and tried to hide them. But am I not too cold with him? Thought Princess Maria. I'm trying to restrain myself because deep in my soul I feel myself already too close to him. But he doesn't know at all that I'm thinking about him and may imagine that I find him disagreeable. And Princess Maria tried and was unable to be cordial with the new guest. Le pauvre fille, elle est diablement laide, thought Anatoly, which means, poor girl, she's devilishly ugly. Mademoiselle Bourrienne, whom Anatoly's arrival had also brought to a high level of excitement, was thinking along different lines. Of course, the beautiful young woman, with no definite position in the world, with no family or friends or even country, did not intend to devote her life to serving Prince Nikolai Andreevich, reading books to him, or being friends with Princess Maria. Mademoiselle Bourrienne had long been waiting for a Russian prince who would at once be able to appreciate her superiority over the plain, badly dressed, awkward Russian princesses, would fall in love with her and carry her off. And this Russian prince had finally come. Mademoiselle Bourrienne had a story, heard from her aunt, completed by herself, which she liked to tell over in her imagination. It was a story about a seduced girl whose poor mother, sa pauvre mère, appeared to her in a vision and reproached her for giving herself to a man outside of wedlock. Mademoiselle Bourrienne often brought herself to tears telling him, the seducer, this story in her imagination. Now he, this real Russian prince, had come. He will carry her off, then ma pauvre mère will appear, and he will marry her. Thus the whole future story of Mademoiselle Bourrienne had taken shape in her head while she was talking with him about Paris. Mademoiselle Bourrienne was not guided by calculation. She did not spend a moment thinking of what she was to do, but it had all long been prepared in her and now merely arranged itself around her, the visiting Anatoly, whom she wished and strove to please as much as she could. The little princess, like an old war horse, hearing the sound of trumpets, was preparing herself, unconsciously forgetting her condition, for her habitual coquettish gallop, without any second thoughts or struggles, but with naive, light-minded merriment. Although Anatoly, in women's company, usually placed himself in the position of a man who is sick of having women running after him, he took a vain pleasure in seeing his effect on these three women. Besides, he was beginning to experience for the pretty and provocative Bourrienne that passionate animal feeling which came over him with extraordinary quickness and urged him towards the most coarse and bold actions. After tea, the company went to the sitting room, and the princess was asked to play on the clavichord. Anatoly leaned on his elbow before her next to Mademoiselle Bourrienne, and his eyes, laughing and joyful, looked at Princess Maria. Princess Maria felt his gaze upon her with tormenting and joyful excitement. Her favorite sonata transported her into her innermost poetic world, and the gaze she felt upon her endowed that world with still greater poetry. Anatoly's gaze, though directed at her, referred not to her but to the movements of Mademoiselle Bourrienne's little foot, which he touched just then with his own foot under the pianoforte. Mademoiselle Bourrienne was also looking at the princess. In her beautiful eyes there was an expression of frightened joy and hope, which was also new for Princess Maria. How he loves me, thought Princess Maria. How happy I am now, and how happy I may be with such a friend and such a husband. Can it be a husband, she thought, not daring to look up at his face, still feeling that same gaze directed at her. In the evening, when they had all begun to disperse after supper, Anatoly kissed Princess Maria's hand. She did not know herself how she had boldness enough, but she glanced straight at the beautiful face as it approached her near-sighted eyes. After the princess, he went to kiss Mademoiselle Bourrienne's hand. This was improper, but he did everything so confidently and simply, and Mademoiselle Bourrienne blushed and glanced fearfully at the princess. Quelle délicatesse, thought the princess. Can Amélie, That was Mademoiselle Bourrienne's name. Really think I could be jealous of her and not appreciate her pure affection for me and devotion to me? She went over to Mademoiselle Bourrienne and kissed her warmly. Anatole went to kiss the little princess's hand. Non, 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 quand votre père m'écria que vous conduisez bien, je vous donnerai ma main à baiser. Passe avant. And raising her finger and smiling, she left the room. And so the little princess said before leaving, No, 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 when your father writes me that you are behaving well, I'll give you my hand to kiss, not before. Section 5. They all dispersed, and, except for Anatole, who fell asleep as soon as he lay down, it was long before anyone slept that night. Can it be that he's my husband? Precisely this stranger, this handsome, kind man, above all kind, thought Princess Maria, and fear, which hardly ever came to her, came over her now. She was afraid to look around. She fancied someone was standing there behind the screen in the dark corner, and that someone was he, the devil, and he was this man with the white forehead, black eyebrows, and red mouth. She rang for the maid and asked her to sleep in her room. Mademoiselle Bourrienne spent a long night that evening walking in the winter garden, vainly waiting for someone, and now smiling at someone, now waxing tearful, touched in her imagination by the words of ce pauvre mère reproaching her for her fall. The little princess grumbled at her maid because the bed was not right. It was impossible for her to lie either on her side or on her front. Everything was heavy and awkward. Her belly got in her way. It got in her way more than ever precisely today because Anatole's presence transported her more vividly into another time, when it was not there, and everything was light and merry for her. She sat in an armchair, in her bed jacket and nightcap. Katya, sleepy and with her braid tangled, plumped up and turned the heavy feather bed for the third time, muttering something. I told you, it's all bumps and hollows, the little princess repeated. I'd be glad to fall asleep myself, so it's not my fault. And her voice quavered, like the voice of a child who is about to cry. The old prince was also awake. Tikhon, through his sleep, heard him pacing about angrily and snorting through his nose. It seemed to the old prince that he was offended for his daughter. The offense was most painful because it was concerned not himself but another, his daughter, whom he loved more than himself. He told himself that he would think over the whole matter again and find what was fair and ought to be done, but instead he only irritated himself more. The first comer turns up, and her father and everything's forgotten, and she runs, does her hair up, and wags her tail, and isn't like herself at all. Glad to abandon her father. She knew I'd notice. Snort, snort, snort. As if I don't see that this fool is only looking at Borenka. She must be thrown out. And how can she not have pride? Enough pride to realize it. If she has no pride for herself, at least she could have it for me. She must be shown that that blockhead doesn't even give her a thought. It is only for Bourrienne. She has no pride, and I'll show her that by telling his daughter that she was mistaken, that Anatole intended to pay court to Bourrienne, the old prince knew he would rouse Princess Maria's amour propre, and his cause, the wish that not to part with his daughter, would be won, and that calmed him down. He called Tikhon and began to undress. The devil brought them here, he thought, as Tikhon slipped on a nightgown over the dry old man's body, the chest overgrown with gray hair. I didn't invite them. They've come to upset my life, and there's not much left of it. Devil take them, he said, while the shirt still covered his head. Tikhon knew the prince's habit of sometimes expressing his thoughts aloud, and therefore with an unchanged face met the irately questioning gaze of the face that emerged from the shirt. Gone to bed? Asked the prince. Tikhon, like all good valets, instinctively knew his master's train of thought. He guessed that he was being asked about Prince Vasily and his son. They've gone to bed and put out the lights, if you please, your excellency. No need, the prince said quickly, and putting his feet into his slippers and his arms through the sleeves of his dressing gown, he went to the sofa on which he slept. Though nothing had yet been said between Anatole and Mademoiselle Bourrienne, they understood each other perfectly in regard to the first part of the romance. before the appearance of the pauvre mère, understood that they had much to tell each other in secret, and therefore in the morning they both sought an occasion to see each other alone. When Princess Maria went at the usual hour to see her father, Mademoiselle Bourrienne met with Anatole in the winter garden. Princess Maria came to her father's door that day with particular trepidation. It seemed to her not only that everyone knew her fate was to be decided that day, but that they also knew what she thought about it. She read that expression on the face of Tikhon, and on the face of Prince Vasili's valet, who met her in the corridor while carrying hot water, and bowed low to her. The old prince was extremely gentle and painstaking in dealing with his daughter that morning. Princess Maria knew this painstaking expression of her father's very well. It was the expression he had on his face in the moments when his dry hands clenched into fists from vexation at Princess Maria's not understanding a problem in arithmetic, and getting up he would step away from her and in a soft voice repeat the same words several times. He got down to business straight away and began the conversation in a formal tone. "A proposal has been made to me concerning you, miss," he said, smiling unnaturally. "You have guessed, I believe," he went on, "that Prince Vasili came here and brought with him his pupil." For some reason, Prince Nikolai Andreevich called Anatoly a pupil. "Not just for my good pleasure. A proposal has been made to me yesterday concerning you, and since you know my rules, I am referring it to you." "How am I to understand you, mon père?" said the princess, turning pale, then red. "How understand?" her father cried irately. "Prince Vasili finds you to his taste as a daughter-in-law and proposes to you on behalf of his pupil. That's how. How understand? And I am asking you." "I don't know, mon père, how you—" the princess said in a whisper. I, what have I got to do with it? Leave me out of it. It's not I who am getting married. And what about you, miss? That's what is desirable to know." In the moment, the princess saw that her father looked unfavorably on this matter, but at the same moment it occurred to her that her fate in life would be decided now or never. She lowered her eyes so as not to see his gaze, under the influence of which she felt she could not think but only obey out of habit, and said, "I desire only one thing, to do your will," she said. "But if my desire must needs be expressed—" She did not have time to finish. The prince interrupted her. "Splendid!" he cried. "He'll get you and your dowry, and incidentally take along Mademoiselle Bourrienne. She'll be his wife, and you—" The prince stopped. He noticed the expression these words made on his daughter. She hung her head and was about to cry. Well, I'm joking, he said. "Remember one thing, princess. I hold to the rule that a girl has the full right to choose, and I give you freedom. Remember one thing. The happiness of your life depends on your decision. There's no point in talking about me." "But I don't know, mon père." "There's no point in talking. They'll tell him, and he'll marry not only you, but anyone else as well, if you're free to choose. Go to your room, think it over, and in an hour come to me and say in his presence yes or no. I know you'll be praying. Well, pray then, only you'd better think. Now go." "Yes or no, yes or no, yes or no," he went on shouting, once the princess, reeling as if in a fog, had left his study. Her fate was decided, and decided happily, but what her father had said about Mademoiselle Bourrienne, that was a terrible hint. Untrue, let us suppose, but all the same it was terrible, and she could not help thinking about it. She was walking straight ahead through the winter garden without seeing or hearing anything, when suddenly the familiar whisperings of Mademoiselle Bourrienne roused her. She looked up and saw Anatole 2 steps away from her, embracing the Frenchwoman and whispering something to her. Anatole, with a frightful expression on his handsome face, turned to look at Princess Maria, and for the first second did not let go of the waist of Mademoiselle Bourrienne, who did not see her. "Who's there? Why, wait," Anatole's face seemed to say. Princess Maria was looking at them silently. She could not understand it. Finally, Mademoiselle Bourrienne gave a little cry and ran away. Anatole, with a merry smile, bowed to Princess Maria, as if inviting her to laugh at this odd incident, and shrugging his shoulders went to the door that led to his part of the house. An hour later, Tikhon came to summon Princess Maria. He summoned her to the prince, and added that Prince Vasili Sergeyevich was also there. When Tikhon came, the princess was sitting on the sofa in her room, holding the weeping Mademoiselle Bourrienne in her arms. Princess Maria was gently stroking her head. Her beautiful eyes, with all their former calm and luminosity, looked at the pretty face of Mademoiselle Bourienne with tender love and pity. Non, princesse, je suis perdue pour toujours dans votre corps, said Mademoiselle Bourienne. Why, I love you more than ever, said Princess Maria, and shall try to do everything in my power for your happiness. But you despise me. You who are so pure, you will never understand this fit of passion. Ah, only my poor mother. I understand everything, Princess Maria answered with a sad smile. Calm down, my friend. I'll go to my father, she said, and went out. Prince Vasily, one leg crossed high upon the other, a snuff-box in his hand, as if moved to the utmost, and if regretting and laughing at his sentimentality himself, was sitting with a smile of tender emotion on his face. When Princess Maria came in, he quickly brought a pinch of snuff to his nose. Ah, my good one, he said, rising and taking her by both hands. He sighed and added, My son's fate is in your hands. Decide, my good, my dear, my sweet Marie, whom I've always loved like my own daughter. He stepped aside. An actual tear came to his eye. Snort, snort, snorted Prince Nikolai Andreevich. The prince, on behalf of his pupil, son, is proposing to you. Do you or do you not want to be the wife of Prince Anatoly Korygin? Say yes or no, he shouted, and then I retain my right to give my opinion as well. Yes, my opinion, and only my opinion, added Prince Nikolai Andreevich, turning to Prince Vasily and replying in his pleading expression. Yes or no? Well, my wish, mon père, is never to leave you, never to separate my life from yours. I do not want to marry, she said resolutely, her beautiful eyes looking at Prince Vasily and her father. Rot! Foolishness! Rot, 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 shouted Prince Nikolai Andreevich, frowning and taking his daughter by the hand. He pulled her to him and did not kiss her, but leaning his forehead to her forehead, touched it and squeezed her hand, which he was holding, so hard that she winced and cried out. Prince Vasily rose. My dear, I shall tell you that this is a moment I shall never, never forget. But my good one, will you not give us a little hope of touching so good, so generous a heart? Say that perhaps. The future is so large. Say perhaps. Prince, what I said is all that is in my heart. I thank you for the honor, but I shall never be your son's wife. Well, that ends that, my dear. Very good to see you. Very glad to see you. Go to your room, princess. Go, said the old prince. Very, very glad to see you, he repeated, putting his arm around Prince Vasily. My calling is different, Princess Maria thought to herself. My calling is to be happy with a different happiness, the happiness of love and self-sacrifice. And whatever the cost, I shall make for poor Amélie's happiness. She loves him so passionately. She repents so passionately. I shall do everything to arrange her marriage to him. If he is not rich, I shall give her means. I shall ask father and ask André. I shall be so happy when she is his wife. She is so unhappy, a stranger, lonely, helpless. And my God, how passionately she loves him if she could so forget himself. I might have done the same, thought Princess Maria. And that's the end of 6. So we'll end it there today. And I can't help feel sad for Princess Maria. She's like sort of a pitiful character. And naive too. It's funny how everyone's like getting so quickly married. As you may recall, Prince Vasily arranged for Pierre to marry his daughter Helene in the last segment we read, and it was as soon as he arranged, it was like a month and a half later, and they were married. So, but yeah, Mademoiselle Bourienne, bit of a loose woman. Not slut shaming, just saying, especially according to the standards of the time. And Anatoly, as you may all recall from the beginning of the book, is sort of a vapid scoundrel. Not to put too light on it, a point on it, but he's pretty much vapid scoundrel. So I'm really, though I feel bad for Princess Maria, because she was so hoping to have a husband who loved her and a family, and all these lovely dreams that she never dared to dream. Don't do it with Anatoly. Oh, hi! My grandpa's here too. Hi, Grandpa. So yeah, so this is where we'll end it for today. And we'll pick it up again tomorrow. I'll be closer to 3. I'll be right at 3 tomorrow. Wednesdays I have to be quite prompt. So, but thank you all. Let me know if you have any questions or anything in the comments. And I will see you tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in and have a great rest of your Tuesday. Thanks.